Here is how you can easily disprove Islam in under 2 minutes. In verse 5:116, the author of the Quran mistakes the Christian Trinity to be Jesus, God, and Mary.
It's Quran chapter 5, verse 116, not verse 5. If you're going to quote the Quran, at least reference it properly, right? And no, God doesn't say the Trinity is Jesus, peace be upon him, God and Mary, peace be upon her. You clearly can't read properly. The verse says, and God will say, O Jesus, son of Mary, did you ever ask the people to worship you and your mother as gods besides God? And then Jesus denies it, right? The Trinity is 3, right? The verse says, God asks Jesus, did you ever ask people to worship you and your mother? That's 2, not 3. Are you not able to count? Do you not know the difference between 2 and 3? Trinity is 3. How is God referring to the Trinity when he's mentioning 2? And also, it's a rhetorical question from God to Jesus on the Day of Judgment. It's not a claim that God is saying, I'm claiming that these 3 entities, or Jesus, his mother, and me, are the Trinity. So no, there's no mistake in the Quran. And the word ilahain means 2 deities, not 3. So how can it be a Trinity? And the Quran does address the Trinity in verse 171 and chapter 5 verse 73. And it clearly shows that it says the Christians believe in the Trinity, and then it mentions the Trinity and says the 3, meaning God, Jesus, and the Spirit. So the Quran isn't confused about the Trinity, it mentions the Trinity twice.
Finally, the Quran, which is supposedly the perfectly preserved word of Allah, is filled with contradictions. In verse 614, Muhammad says that he is the first Muslim.
Again, learn to reference the Quran if you're going to attempt to refute it, because it's verse 14 of chapter 6, not verse 6. And it says, say, I have been commanded to be the first to submit. Okay.
But then in verse 7:143, it says Moses was the first Muslim.
And then again, verse 143 of chapter 7, not verse 7. And what does this say? It says that Moses said, I am the first of the believers. It doesn't say Muslim. So where's the contradiction? This isn't a contradiction, it's your lack of knowledge of the Quran and Islamic theology. Why? Our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, says, I am the first to submit. It means he is the first amongst his people to submit, not the first within history to submit. It's among his people of Quraysh. And when Moses, peace be upon him, said, I am the first of the believers, again, it refers to his time and his people. And both verses use different words. Chapter 6 verse 14 says, Aslama, which means to submit. And chapter 7 verse 143 says, just to believe. Submitting and believing are not the same thing, so it can't be a contradiction. And also the Quran in chapter 3, known as Surah Al-Imran verse 67, says Ibrahim was a Muslim. So previous prophets before our prophets, they were all Muslims as well. So our prophet, peace be upon him and his family, is the first to submit amongst the Quraysh. Moses, peace be upon him, was the first to submit amongst his people, and when he conversed with his Lord at Mount Sinai. Every prophet was the first to submit amongst their people.
My favorite contradiction within the Quran comes from verse 2:56, which says that there is no compulsion in religion.
And yes, the verse says indeed there is no compulsion in religion.
But then if we turn to verse 9:5, it says, kill the polytheists wherever you find them.
But chapter 9 verse 5 doesn't say kill all the polytheists. At least read the full verse and the verse before and after so that you can understand context. The verse was revealed after the polytheists had violated their treaties with the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family. How? By attacking the Muslims. The treaty said there will be no attacks. These guys, they violated the treaty and they attacked the Muslims. The verse is part of a war declaration, not a general command to kill all polytheists. And it's only for those who broke the treaty. It doesn't say go kill every single polytheist that you can find. And the verse before, chapter 9 verse 4 says, accept those polytheists with whom you have made a treaty and who have not violated it, fulfill your treaty with them. So there's a distinction. And then the verse after, chapter 9 verse 6 says, if any of the polytheists seeks your protection or profit, grant him protection. And then it says, and then deliver him to a place of safety. Wow, such a dangerous and violent religion, right? Not to mention that our Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, signed multiple treaties with the Christians of Najran, allowing them to remain as Christians, despite them not converting, and offered them full protection. Even a polytheist by the name of Safwan ibn Umayyah, he fled Makkah, sought refuge with the Prophet in Medina. The Prophet gave him protection and didn't ask him to convert or force him to convert. He remained a polytheist, but he was under the protection of our Prophet. And also Jews, Christians, and even pagans were allowed to live under the Islamic rule of the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, with full protection. Oh my God, so violent.